Watching this movie was tough. A lot of the characters in it had friction, but I'm a fan of it anyway. Welcome to a brand new episode of Movies and Me. I'm your host, Nolan Dean, and with me today is one of the guests who I've been trying to get for ages, and we finally got him here. He's showing his bearded face on Hangouts right now. It's even more beautiful in person. Please welcome founder of the TUFF Channel, Mr. Jack Shipley.
Hi, everybody. How you doing? I'm Jack Shipley. Nice to be here. Thank you, Nolan, of course, for inviting me. I'm looking forward to this a lot.
Yeah, I've been psyched to have you on here, dude. So, do you want to let the audience at home know which movie did you choose?
I chose a childhood favorite. This was out when I was just a young kid. It was one of my favorite movies as a kid. I watched it all the time. I chose The NeverEnding Story.
Yeah, and you know this about me, dude. I write children's stories that are kind of similar to this, and every time I look at what's a good children's fantasy movie to watch to get inspiration, The NeverEnding Story always comes up. So I gotta know, what is it about The NeverEnding Story for you that makes it specifically personal to you as a film fan?
Well, it came along at a time in my life where it was just me and my mom, and so I really identified with the lead character, Bastian, because I was a kid. I didn't have lots of friends at school. You know, I was shy at school, but I liked to read, and I read a lot. And because it was just me and my mom, you know, she had to work to take care of us. To take care of me. There's only one of me. But she had to work to take care of me. So, you know, a lot of the times I'd entertain myself, and the way I would do that was through books. So when I saw that movie, and here's the story of a kid who is escaping the world through books, and the books are coming alive in a way that, for me, when I read books, like, they come alive in my head. Like, I read books at the speed that it would take place if it was a movie. So I don't read very quickly because I absorb every scene I read, and I kind of picture it in my head, and it plays out in my brain as a movie. So The NeverEnding Story is almost that concept of how I read and consume fantasy as a child on screen. So I really identified with it, but I specifically identified with Bastian as a lead character. And this is a really important movie for me when I was a kid because of that.
Yeah, and I think Bastian's really it's obvious to us that he's the audience's eyes, but for a long time, since it was the first time I saw this movie, I kept thinking that the main kid was Atreyu, and that it was sort of like the kid going into the story, but it's not really that. But the way I kind of saw it was Bastian's kind of like the audience's mentality, and Atreyu is maybe what the audience wants to be when they're reading a fantasy story. So is there anything there you can comment on, or am I just talking out of my ass?
No, I think of course all the interpretations that you have personally are valid. So for me, though, I saw it a little differently. I see the events that take place to him in the film, and I have the book. I love the book. It's very similar to the book, but there are differences. And the movie itself, by the way, is only the first half of the novel. But I do recommend the novel to anyone who is interested in diving further. But I see Bastian. I see everything that happens in Fantasia as a reflection of the things that are happening to Bastian in his real world. So the nothingness is the feeling that he has because his mother is gone, and he feels alone. So this as a child, like, the loss of his parent is growing inside him. It's a darkness inside him that he's having trouble reconciling with, and that's why the nothing is growing and growing and consuming a fantasy world. It's consuming his inspiration, his joy, and that's the same thing as Bastian's grief is consuming him. So the nothingness is a reflection of that. And then Atreyu is another part of Bastian as a representation of his desire to find a way out of the nothing, right? To find a way out of grief. And to reconcile, how do I defeat this grief? How do I defeat the nothing? Well, Atreyu is his journey into figuring that out. And it's unclear in the film, but throughout the movie they ask Atreyu that, you know, you're looking for a name for the Empress. You know, we got to give the Empress a new name, and the only person who can give the Empress a new name is this boy. We got to find this kid, and it's Bastian, and that's how the sort of magic of the book works. But it's being able to identify his mother is the key. And you don't really hear it in the film very well. He yells out a name when it's time to give a name. He yells out a name. And in the book, he yells out Moonflower. But in the movie, it's apparently the name he yells is his mother's name. And that sort of symbolizes that he's reached that point where he's come to grips with the loss. So the whole movie for me is about losing a parent or losing someone in your life and figuring out how to keep going with their absence. So I think that's the way. I think that's where the identification comes, and not because I was looking for any. I had a single parent, so I sort of identify with that in the sense of I'm trying to understand being a kid in that same vein. Like, whereas I have one parent, and this is the parent who's doing the best they can to take care of me, but I sort of have to figure all these emotional things out on my own because I don't know who to turn to get the solution to it. So, I turn to books, and I sort of get my inspiration from books, and then I just kind of work myself out of it. So, the same thing for Bastion. I think that's where the parallel comes in.
Yeah, and whilst we're on the topic of grief, I've got a bone to pick with you regarding this. Why the hell did you not warn me about this bloody horse scene that takes place about half an hour into the movie? You guys all know what it is. It's probably the most rewatched grief scene on YouTube, but he has a horse named Artax, and the Nothing is kind of presented as like this big, I want to kind of say like an ocean type thing, like an ocean of sadness, and we see the horse die. There's a myth regarding the film regarding that the horse actually died, but I'm sure that's not the case. But the way it's edited gives it like that.
Has said that the horse does live. Nothing happened to the horse. Tammy, a Strawbox, said that nope, the horse was fine.
Yeah, and since I watched this for the first time as a 21-year-old kid, and you probably saw this for the first time a lot younger than that, how did that scene impact you?
Kids love animals, but I don't remember having a deep connection to that moment quite so much. I don't remember being scarred by the horse. I remember that the horse was a thing that happened in the film, but I don't think it was as impactful for me. I was always afraid of the Nothing. So as a kid, the Nothing terrified me, just the concept of a Nothing. So to me, the horse dying is the least depth that the movie hit for me, because I was so consumed by the Nothing and the concept of just something existing and then just not existing. I didn't really understand that as a kid, and trying to wrap my head around it, that is the thing that got me more than the horse. But I as a filmed scene, I thought it was really powerful. It's a really powerful moment. You don't usually see that in kids' movies quite depicted either. A child showing grief over the impending loss of another is not a concept you usually see in a kids' movie. At least at that time, it wasn't. So, I thought it was a really great scene, but it did not have a long-lasting impact on me, as it clearly had for you, having watched it now, not knowing. But I couldn't have spoiled that part. That's like a shock moment. That would be like, hey, the kid in the Sixth Sense sees dead people. I don't want to ruin it. It's not like it's a secret, but you don't know that's coming. If I had told you that's coming, you don't want to be prepared for it. You want to absorb that moment.
Oh, trust me, I did absorb all of that moment in form of sadness and suffering.
So sadness, that's how you're supposed to feel.
Well, moving away from the grief side, I want to talk about some of your favorite moments within this movie, because I've got quite a few. I usually go for little small moments, and that's mostly in the beginning, when you're just seeing, immediately within the first 5 minutes, everything you need to know about the character of Bastion. And the scene that gets to me specifically it's two parts. It's in the way it's shown at the beginning and the way it's shown at the end, is when the bullies are picking on Bastion and they're really letting him have it. And then by the end, once, the conflict has been somewhat resolved and I was quite surprised. He rides his dragon into the town that he lives in, and it's just seen chasing the bullies away. And as a bullied kid, I'm not going to lie, that's sort of a long-time fantasy of mine. But I don't know where it kind of stands within the context of the movie. One hand, you could look at it it's kind of mean-spirited, and on the other hand, you can look at it as a form of sort of redemption for Bastion himself. Is there any way you can interpret that?
Yeah, okay, so having read the book now, as well, I didn't read the book at the time I saw the movie, but having read it since, I can tell you that him naming the Empress is not the end of the movie, or end of the book, it's just the beginning. And the book goes in a whole bunch of different directions after that moment. And the movie was like, well, we gotta end this movie. So they made the story about, Bastion goes into the world, and gets to re-wish the part of the power is you name the Empress, and then you get then Fantastic is a completely blank slate, and your own imagination gets to wish it into being, and that's the second part of the book. So he actually is in Fantasia, or it's called Fantastica in the book, but he's actually there, and then he has to rebuild the world for them because the Nothing destroyed it all. So he has to, he uses his imagination and creates this whole new world, and then he lives in it for a while, and then the danger of living in the world and being from Earth is that you can get lost in it and forget who you were. I mean, you can't, by the time all of the things I just described happen, the movie is 2 hours in. So the movie had to end. So they basically said, I guess we'll just have the kid get redemption against the bullies and ride off on the dragon, and hey, look, kids, dragon. It's the weakest part of the film, sure. And it's kind of like a neat bow. Let's just wrap it up and put him on a dragon, and see, we came full circle. End of story. And it's a shame in a way because it does. The lesson it's not about overcoming bullies, and it you know what I mean. Like he grew as a character, especially in the book. But he grows as a character. Like when he shouts out her name, he's learned something in the movie. But then they just kind of go, okay, he's learned something, and now he's going to ride a dragon and chase down some bullies because he can make some wishes, you know. And that's where there's a departure. So I kind of just accept the ending as like, okay, we've been here for 2 hours. It's time to go home, you know. And that's why it looks that way.
And as we know, this movie actually did get a sequel, which I haven't seen, but I have heard from a lot of NeverEnding Story fans that it's not good.
The reason is because most NeverEnding Story movie fans haven't read the book, which is, you know, because this is a time too when like people didn't know that was a book. I didn't know it was a book when I saw it. I was 8 or 6 or something, but I found out later that it was. And the second movie is trying to do the second part of the first book, but it because it's a different person or a different actor and stuff like that, but they're still trying to tie it together because it's technically a sequel. That's why I think all the story problems happened between the first and second. You can live your entire life and never see that second movie and be perfectly fine. And I recommend that that's what you do.
Well, I know you've got a lot of favorite moments and favorite scenes in this movie, so let's talk about some of those. What's a moment that immediately sticks out to you, maybe in the world of Fantasia or just from how the way the movie goes about doing its message?
I love Morla, the Ancient One, which is the giant turtle.
I was hoping you'd say that.
My favorite character in that movie is that turtle. I love everything about how that scene is crafted. The turtle is practical. You know, this is before CGI. So you have a giant puppet turtle head. You know, you have this kid. I love that he climbs a tree to get to its face, and how slow Morla talks, and not that it matters, but yes. You know, like the pacing of that character. Brilliant voice work. I don't know off the top of my head who did the voice work for Morla, but Morla's voice work is amazing. And that is, for the short time that character is on screen, it does everything it's supposed to do. It's an interesting character in a fantastical world. It's a giant turtle. It sneezes on him, so it's funny. It's got a silly voice in the fact that it talks slow and how it speaks. So it has all of the kid elements you want, while at the same time disseminating information that's generally important to the story. And it just stands out. It's a larger-than-life character. All the characters in this film, fantastical characters, are great. The rock biter is just interesting. The racing snail is so cool as a concept and an idea. So the character design is one of my favorite things about this, especially because you don't necessarily read the book and see the characters exactly as you would have seen them on screen, which means someone read that and said, this is what I think this looks like. And that is the whole point of the NeverEnding Story, in a nutshell. It's take your imagination and you apply your imagination to this world. That's why the next person who reads the book has a different experience than you, because that's the magic of how the book works. So Morla is, without a doubt, one of my favorite characters. The Nothing, as scary as it is also a fantastic character because it's a concept, but it's not just a plot device. If you think about it more, you know, and you think about how the Nothing relates to Bastion, it's a very important character. I had a crush on the Childlike Empress as a kid because Tammy is gorgeous, and she still looks like the Childlike Empress. And then the Gamorg, the wolf stood out to me as well, even though it's the fastest and cheesiest fight scene.
It's scary as hell though, that scene. Like it comes out of nowhere.
He is, and I like he's sort of this, he's stalking Atreyu he's your sense of, there's two senses of keeping the story moving. The nothing is encroaching on everything, and the Gamorrean is chasing us down. So he's, I like, and then he defeats one, and then he defeats the other. So I like how they sort of wrap that in the package and present the movie. So those are my favorite characters. But Morla, the ancient one, without a doubt, is the coolest in that movie. More than Falkor. I didn't even mention Falkor. Falkor's a giant, huge dog dragon. Could care less.
To be honest, when I saw that dragon for the first time, I kept imagining him to be voiced by Ian McKellen. I don't know why, but like he just gives me that kind of vibe.
And I didn't have an appreciation for voice work that I would now, but the voice work in that movie is really good, as well as the puppeteering. And just shows you like how cool it is to have practical effects. I mean, when you figure that dog is gigantic, and he really is created, like they created that dog, because there's that scene where Atreyu sleeps against his fur, and you see that they made this giant dog puppet, and that's like amazing. I love that about the craft of movie making. I wish they did more of. That's why the movies that go back to practical effects, I think, are on the right track. I think the more practical you can do, the better.
Yeah, I completely agree with that, and I think we're nearing the end. We're not quite there yet, so don't worry. This is not going to be a never-ending story, but it's still going to go on for a little bit. Jack, I want you to imagine something for me, okay? Because I know you've got a great imagination.
Uh-oh.
Imagine that I've never seen the never-ending story, and before you shoot me in the face, just picture that I've never ever seen it. What do you tell me to get me to watch it right away?
So it's a movie about, it's a childlike movie where a child finds inspiration within himself. I probably said this better a different way, but it's a movie about a child who finds his inspiration and his magic within himself and explores a fantastical world with fantastical creatures, and they're all puppets. So I'd say you should watch The NeverEnding Story. I love The NeverEnding Story. It's dated, but it still holds up, in my opinion.
And I think that'll end up wrapping us up for this episode. Jack, I know you've got a busy schedule, man, but thank you so much for coming on my show. Where can the good people find you, and is there anything you want to plug?
Well, first of all, thank you very much for having me. I'm glad we were finally able to get this together. This is, like I said, one of my favorite movies. So if you want to chat at me, tell me what you thought of NeverEnding Story or anything else, you can reach me on Twitter at JRSPipboy, P-I-P, boy, 2008. That is my Twitter handle. I'm there every day, so feel free to hit me up. Or you can find me on the TUFF Channel, which is a channel I run with some friends, where we do a bunch of different shows, including one called Fan Friction, which is a movie debate show that Nolan has been on, as well as some other great, just regular fans of movies and television that we've encountered on Twitter. So we'd love to have you check that out. And the TUFF Channel has its own Twitter. It's at TUFF Channel, and TUFF is spelled T-U-F-F, with the address to our channel right on that Twitter. So feel free to go there and check it out.
Believe me, I've been trading for whenever you ask me to come back. I am going to win this time, because I need to get some kind of win here.
Well, we're going to be off for the summer. We're doing some alternative shows, and then we come back in the fall. So definitely, we plan on having you back. We loved your first appearance, and we definitely want you to come on again. So we'll be doing it. Don't worry. We film every other week. So unfortunately, there's just only so many shows we can do with regular schedules and families and all that stuff.
And as always, you guys can find me at Nolan Dean 27 and use the hashtag #MoviesAndMe to help continue the conversation, or send me or Jack a tweet. And next week, host of the DVD Bunker and Fan Friction champion Brian Hurst is going to be joining me, talking about some John Candy movies, both Summer Rental and The Great Outdoors. 2 John Candy films I've never seen, so it's going to be another fresh watch. And if you guys like this episode, hit the subscribe button, and I will see you guys next time.